Welcome to Powered by Podio. Automation is everything. Supercharge your business with Podio. Get ready for another episode of Supercharged with Jordan Samuel Fleming, your weekly dive into the awesome impact workflow and automation can have on your business when it's powered by Podio. Join us each week as we learn from the top Podio partners in the world, as we investigate system integrations and add-ons, and hear from real business owners who have implemented Podio into their business. Now, join your host Jordan Samuel Fleming, CEO of Game Changers, for this week's episode.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Supercharged. I'm your host Jordan Samuel Fleming, here to talk all about the power of workflow and automation when your business is powered by Podio. Now, in this episode, I'm joined by Gil from Brickbridge Consulting. Brickbridge are great friends of the show. We've done group podcasts before. I've been on their great Podio podcast as well. And in this week's episode, Gil and I really focus in on some of the ways in which Citrix Workspace has started to work within the Podio ecosystem. For those of you who aren't aware, Citrix Workspace is a new system that Citrix has brought out, and it's a way of really bringing the different disparate elements of your business process, the different systems you use, and bringing it all together so that the end user, your employees, your team members, can really work within a streamlined environment. It's something that I think we're going to see a lot more about it, and it's really been driven in some ways by the situation we've been in. The last year, for those of you who may be listening in the future, we have been in lockdown across the world because of the coronavirus pandemic, and that has brought about a real focus on working from home, remote working, on ways of allowing flexibility in the way you work, but also in what does it mean to be able to have your team work efficiently? What does it mean to give them the right tools? And it's something that we talk about in this podcast, how do you make sure you don't completely lose the human touch, the human-to-human element of working together? You know, we all need breaks throughout the day. We all like to chat to each other and have a little conversation with the person who sits near us, or the water cooler moment and the 5 minutes catching up on the television we just watched, or whatever it is. Working is not just 24/7 work. It is a way of socializing as well, and to understand how to do all that and what that means from a system point of view, what it means from a giving people the right experience and efficiency, but also promoting ways of working together in a more cohesive whole, in a human-to-human element, is something we really kind of focus in on and discuss and brainstorm in this episode. It's really interesting. I certainly am looking forward to the continued development of this, and it was a great chance for Gil to bring some of his knowledge of Citrix Workspace and how it works with Podio, how it really chimes together with Podio. For those of you who don't know, Brickbridge Consulting, which is Gil's company, they have really led the charge in this area. They have won the last two hackathon, as they call them, competitions that Citrix promotes. And that is because they really have a sense and understanding through the Podio ecosystem of what it is like to drive workflow and how you kind of build that best case way of people being able to work efficiently. Really interesting episode. I think we're going to try and do more workspace and more episodes around this sort of external and other third-party integration over the next couple seasons of the podcast, so that we can explore all the things that's out there. But let's kick off right now. Let's join the conversation where Gil and I can really take the charge and start to talk about workspace, human-to-human elements, and the way you can best devise systems to work within a human environment. Let's listen in. Okay, excellent. Of nonsense, but I mean, well, here we are, Gil, here we are, and obviously, you're wearing a number of hats like I am. And one of the literally like I am, but one of the things, and apparently you work for SpaceX as well. So
I wish, man, that would be, oh my gosh. I would trade this in for that SpaceX job. I'd probably go be a janitor there, but just to be a part of something as cool as that.
I would tend to agree with you on that. But so,
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that for those people who don't know this, obviously the Citrix ecosystem has a number of products, and most of them play well with Podio from a cloud-based system. ShareFile, Right Signature, Podio are all sort of part of the suite. But the newer kid on the block is this thing called Workspace. It may not be a bad idea to give a bit of an overview and an understanding of what is all involved in here, because Podio really does chime in together on that. And Gil here and his company are probably the leading the charge from a Podio ecosystem point of view into Workspace. So Gil, why don't we start there and focus in on that? Why don't you give us a little understanding?
Oh, thanks, Jordan. I appreciate you having us on again. It's always a pleasure to be on your podcast. I love you as a host. So thank you so much. As for most of us, I think we've been on a couple times, and we do a few different things. So I'll give a very, very, very brief introduction. So here at Brickbridge Consulting, we are a official Citrix partner based under the authorization. It's the CSA program, Citrix Solution Advisor. Any Podio developer listening to this that has not considered that program, I would do so. There's a bunch of new stuff coming out related to Podio for CSAs. That will make that an advantage. It's not hard to get that silver level. So quick plug for that. But we also have Sassafras, which is a proprietary toolkit, flow engine, and copy and deployment system and patching system for more complicated Podio solutions and templates and things of that nature. So please reach out to us. What we've really been focusing on probably since we learned about it summer of 2019 and over the pandemic has been the workspace with intelligence. Citrix is aligning behind a SaaS portfolio. The recent Reich acquisition is huge. That will be brought into this kind of family of products. They've kind of built this holy trinity of Workspace, Podio, Reich, with ShareFile and Right Signature as the nougaty center. Those products are coming together. They've hired, and you can see these on the updates for those Podio developers in that they've hired additional staff at Podio and some other things just to be able to beef their side up. And I think that they're pulling some of those development teams closer and closer together. So they're really kind of building this SaaS product vertical and making all these products work nicely together. Jordan, you and me, and I'm sure everybody else that's done Podio development for other people have run into the question of, I don't like the Podio interface, right? Like, I don't like the way that it looks. Can it be red instead of blue or something, something silly like that? Not that people's desires are silly, but come on. Workspace solves that problem. Now, it is an additional cost, and I would not recommend it for small organizations that probably don't have a large production budget for you anyway. But for those larger and those that deal with organizations more than 25 people, particularly over 100 people or 50, just depending on what it is, Workspace can provide that relief valve of being able to customize the interface.
Well,
yes.
let's take this down a step for a second, because I get from a Podio partner perspective, there's some things, but let's focus on an end user perspective for a minute. Like,
yes.
let's talk about it as though, like, we got people who are maybe using Podio in their business already. What about with whatever complexity it is? Could be very simple, could be quite complex, could be 10 people, 5 people, could be 150 people. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, I think this is where you're going in some ways. One of the challenges of Podio, I think, is, and it's not just about the aesthetics. Like, can I change it? Can I, fucking from blue to red or anything like that? But actually, it's around, in your organization, there's almost always either internal or external, but mainly internal, people who only have to touch a few things.
Right.
And I think one of the things that Podio, because of the ecosystem, which I love, and I'm obviously, and for me, I can whiz around it like none of the business, but because of the kind of Podio workspace, not Citrix workspace, but Podio with a workspace, architecture, organization, workspaces, apps, items, because of that, you're in essence forcing people who may only have to do a couple things a couple times a month to go into Podio and remember where the fuck anything is, and how to do things. And that is a fundamental business issue that I think is where Workspace can really be interesting, where you're not necessarily you've got a bunch of people who aren't necessarily doing things in Podio every day. If your business is running off of Podio 100% and everybody's in there clicking buttons and doing things, great. But for those people who are like running certain processes, but other things happen elsewhere, that's where Workspace comes in, right?
You're exactly right. And it's actually not just a Podio problem when you talk about people having to go into a system every once in a while, because it's not a part of their daily job. I mean, there is a zillion of these platforms now. You can go to Zapier and there's like 3,000 of these. So, it's a variable catalog of who's who. And it's, organizations are now allowing line of business managers to select software rather than the classic IT or CIO suite or whatever that may be in an organization to do it. So now, I mean, we got a client, they had multiple licenses of the same platform because different managers were buying it. And then they had different implementations. I'm sure the salesperson loved that sold it to them because they sold it to them and 3 different implementations. But let's be honest, that's ridiculous. So, they had 80 pieces of SaaS software that a call center person may have to interact with. I asked once every 6 months, I'm like, and you trained them on all those? And like, yeah, they get it all in their first week. I'm like, they don't remember any of this. They're human beings, right? Like, and you're right. If you're in it 40 hours a week, that's fine because you're going to get not only the training on the front end, if that happens in your organization,
but the user, the constant reinforcement of, like, yourself, if someone gets, I said this to someone new the other day, I think there's a 2 to 3 month user gap in Podio. And if you get over that hump, you can make Podio spin on a dime and you can do anything as quick as you want. I can maneuver around Podio lightning quick, do anything I want within seconds, and it's not a problem. But if you don't get over that hump because you only use it for a couple things, it is a constant problem. And that is true. And I think this is important. You're right about other pieces of software that you may have to do a couple things too. And for me, when my gut instinct on Workspace and its connection to Podio and its connection to other systems is you can finally then, for a lot of your team who may have to flick into different systems, you can bring those things they have to do to them and let them just work. And not have to remember how to log into QuickBooks Online to update this one time log, or how to, or do this, or jury rig this and that. You can essentially put it in front of them. That's correct, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't expect, especially if you have an organization that has a decent number of people at it, you can't expect the people down on the front line to remember or even care enough to remember all these little quirks that might be as we kind of like stick these Lego bricks of different SaaS softwares together. There'll be quirks that come together because they were all made by different people. So they don't always just line up exactly I think this is where Workspace really is what we're most excited about. It is people go home from the job. They work 8 hours, right? And then they come home and they sit down on their couch, and what do they interact with? Well, it's more software, but that is consumer grade software where it's, Instagram has spent untold amounts of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions, billion, I don't know how much, just an untold amount of money, getting that user experience exactly correct, right? To make it addictive. And then they turn on the Netflix and they got all these beautiful graphical representations. I mean, you can use Netflix. You don't even never seen Netflix before in like 5 minutes. You can't, now you're binging, right? So these are what everybody uses the other 16 hours of the day. And then they show up at their job and it's backwards. Everything is backwards. They got a zillion browser tabs. I got to have 50 passwords. I mean, I don't know how many times I hit forgot password at this point. And then, they always tell you, or your IT department won't allow you. They always tell you always have different passwords and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I can't remember random,
Thank God for LastPass is all I can say, because that fucking thing saves, because I also now have really complex passwords for everything.
Yes.
Because I'm just like, fuck, I don't care. Give me a 50 character password with all sorts of shit in it.
Yeah, good luck getting into that, hackers, right? Because it's like this long. Like, I don't even know my own password.
I don't know either. I don't know goddamn one, right? Except my LastPass one.
Right.
Without that one, I'm fucked.
Yeah, I know, right? It's gone. Like, you may as well just turn the lights out. But yeah, it's exactly right. I mean, this is happening to everyone. We're at a point with software, especially business software, that we got to start realizing that there's a human being in the element. And I know a lot of organizations are process driven, and then they encode those processes in the software. We do this as Podio developers, but we forget that there's a human being on the other end that goes home and interacts with software every day. You can't get rid of it, right? I mean, we carry around a little software brick in our pocket, and it's everywhere. It truly has started to eat the world, and I think it's that has shown up on at scale, right? So, you got even your banks, even these regional banks, even they have nice little pretty apps and stuff on there. And it's hard for people to kind of come backwards into some of these interfaces that business software represents, right? It's very utilitarian. A lot of them are very Spartan.
Well, it's about efficiency of time, right? Because if you're constantly having to bop, like I know myself, when I have to, for instance, every once in a while, I have to go to QuickBooks Online, which is and even
God
that,
forbid.
I don't have to do it very much anymore because we've sort of changed the way we bill things. But every once in a while I do, and I have to be like, oh fuck, how do I do I have to kind of give myself a little. Oh yeah, I have to go to do this. I have to go here. Or I'll give you an example. I when I used to, ADP's payroll. Please don't sue me, ADP. But their back end was so god awful that every time I had to run payroll, I would be like, "Oh Jesus! Like, oh for God's sakes, what the hell? Fuck it, what do I do?"
You almost have to have a college class to get through it, right?
And I only have to do it once a month. So that's the problem. So for me, once a month, if I was doing it every friggin' day, I'd probably just be like, yeah, whatever. But because I only had to do it once a month, it was a problem. And where I see Citrix from a Podio perspective as well, where you're building an organization, where you're building your business inside of Podio, your human element, which is what you just said,
right, is
often, we concentrate so much on building the business process. And we're like, that it's very easy to forget that, but so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so only have to do this one thing. So we're bringing into Podio, we're training them, we're doing all this stuff. But instead with Workspace, they can be sitting in front of their desk doing shit. And the one thing they have to do can be presented to them inside of Workspace. As I understand it, you correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Nope,
it can present it to them from Podio, pushed from Podio to Workspace. They see the shit they have to do. They do the thing they have to do, click OK or whatever it is. And then it goes away. And that is true from a Podio perspective, but a Salesforce or a QuickBooks or anything like that. So that my working day is no longer having to remember all these different user interfaces and all these things. Workspace brings it all together. That's what you're going, right? Wait. Quick commercial. It's June 2021, and I am delighted to say we are launching the Game Changers Supercharged Masterclass Series. Have you ever wanted to take your Podio to an even greater level? Well, wearegamechangers.com. Check it out. We will be launching this month a fantastic, completely free masterclass series. Modules that show you how Podio works, how to build automation, how to integrate communication. Basically, we distill a lot of the information and ideas that we've learned from building Podio all over the world for the last 10 years. And as a Supercharged listener, you get access to some great deals if you need a little help activating some of these amazing opportunities in Podio. Check it out, www.wearegamechangers.com. Now let's go back to the podcast.
Absolutely. So key things to hear when you're talking to your clients to see if this is a fit. And this does not exclude Podio. I want to be very, very clear about that. They're actually have tied some things in there, some stuff in Tech Preview. As a partner, you have to sign an NDA. I can't talk about, but we'll just say be a little excited as a Podio developer about how tightly that they're bringing these things together. They should be releasing that Q3, so it should be coming soon. But it really does allow the work to come to the employee, the process to come to the employee, and tell the employee when they should care, right? And specifically what they should care about. So the classic example is a PTO filing. A Workday is this huge monolith system. They got a zillion menus. It does more than just HR stuff, which, you know, you get the developers creep out of the scope of what's going on. If you're an HR person, you should know how to use that software, period. That's your job, right? But if you're a call center person making $10 an hour, you know, telling people that they didn't pay their bill on time, and that's all your whole job is, 8 hours a day because you got a headset attached, that's fine. But you don't care about Workday. Let's be very honest. They barely pay you enough to show up, right? So why are you going to? And then they always give you that training, you know, like day 2 while you're there, or even day 1, and you know it's 2 years later. So what do you do? What actually happens? This is what we do with the clients. Like, yeah, they're supposed to go to Workday and file a PTO. Okay, we got it on the whiteboard. Great, it's on the flow chart. We go out to the person, the frontline person, and this is a key thing for all Podio. Go talk to the people that actually do the job, not management, not middle management, definitely. And go down there and go, what do you do? And they go, oh yeah, that Workday thing. I forgot my password. I haven't been in there in 6 months. I just email, you know, Sally, my middle level manager, and she goes in there for me and files the PTO request. Or I, you know, send another email over to HR. I just email them because it's faster, right? And I know how to use email. Workday, yeah, you know, I go in there, you know, I got to go. They sit us in a room and we all sign in and we do the benefits once a year, and that's that. That's the last time I see it, right? Because I get an email with my pay stub. So, you know, sometimes it even eliminates itself, right? They're not going to want to do complicated processes in that monolith software when they just want to ask for a day off. And let's be honest, who is the cruel person making them do that, right? Like, it's a PTO request. How many days do you have? Great. When do you want off? Great. Okay, fine, it's done, right? Like there's no reason that I got to click all these menus and view balance and send a little request. It's like, look, especially with remote work, it's even more ridiculous, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's who are it's I don't know who they are. We should find out who are these people.
Let's round them up and beat the shit out of them.
yeah, tar and feather, right? Like, and bring them down the streets, because you are just implementing process for process sake, and that's not 2021 here, right? Like, that's especially with remote work. I mean, that's just shot that right in the foot of its need to be inside of the process. Workspace helps with that. Obviously, you get the pretty interfaces. You can actually integrate pieces of software together easier through the interface, because you can make the human being the integration, because it becomes so easy. So we'll just take 2 different scenarios here very, very quickly. So you can tie Podio and another piece of software together to do, let's say, take a 30-minute task and we bring it to 5 minutes. You can do the same thing in Workspace. You can present Podio as a card and then the other system as a card, and then click. And it's like, okay, well, it's still less than a 5-minute process. We've stripped the process down, but instead of us investing $20,000 or $30,000 in this implementation, we can just have the person click. It frees up that half hour, so we can, instead of fully automating and overspending on that, or maybe stretching budget or what have you, we can just reduce and assist the human being who's quite frankly already doing it manually anyway. So they're going to be very happy that's okay. So what we're able to do is actually present organizations with integrations that otherwise wouldn't be able to afford them, because we can make the human being the API connector, right? Because we can reduce the task down so greatly in that feed. Because let's be honest, most stuff, as cool as real-time data transfers are, most stuff doesn't need to be real-time. As long as it gets done, typically within an hour or the workday, it's fine. And if you're feeding them like a hamster drip in Workspace, it saves about 15 minutes out of every hour out of every day. That's 2 hours a day back to the employee in the organization. So, and I'll leave it there because this is a good transition point. We just had our Citrix Ready verification of the Spotify integration for Workspace. So you'll be able to go to Citrix Ready and have Spotify in and have company playlists go out and be able to. So we're doing some really cool stuff inside of Workspace, because you're like, okay, we're giving the employee back 2 hours a day, right? Like that's a lot. What are we going to do with those 2 hours? Well, obviously you can feed them more work, and that's a part of it. The company needs to realize ROI and utilize that resource to be able to get more work done. But 2 hours is a lot of time. What you don't want to do with Workspace is get them conditioned that every time the little notification goes off, they're like, damn, I got more work, right? So what we're looking at doing, and some of these things that we're doing, is putting
sometimes it's just a 5-minute boogie that everybody can have.
Just something fun. And again, with the remote work thing, that kind of water cooler ping pong table is missing.
I'm going to back you up on that 100%. Yeah. I've been remote working I'm in an office, obviously, but most of my team are remote working, so nobody's here with me. And but I do think that one thing I've noticed for the people who have been forced into remote working, right? Like I've been doing it for fucking so long that, and so is my team, that for us, like when this all happened, we're like, yeah, all right, well, all right.
Status quo, right?
Yeah, nothing's changed. But a lot of my friends who work for bigger companies, et cetera, right, and who are suddenly like, I'm working from home. Like they were used to going to an office. One of the things that I did notice, some of them saying, on WhatsApp chats and shit like that, which never really occurred to me, was how much people rely on little things breaking up their day because they're in the office.
Right.
And when you're at home, presuming you don't have kids who are breaking up your fucking day, but when you're at home and you're sitting in front of your computer and your computer is there 24/7 now, your work environment is now there, it becomes a lot easier to be sucked into the working too much and getting, and I think, that balance and finding good balance is a key part of remote working. And maybe something as simple as blasting a Bon Jovi song every, exactly, having Bon Jovi Mondays or something. Why Bon Jovi? I don't know.
We do Metal Mondays around here, so we get
cool.
Monday started right. But you're on the point. You're on the point, which is, how do human beings actually work in an office setting? Senior management or more particularly middle management, I'm beating up on you guys, would love to see little robots show up exactly on time. Maybe, early is on time is late kind of mentality, and late is never acceptable. That kind of mentality, and just sit down and just work their 8 hours and take their scheduled lunches and those kinds of things. And that's just not how human beings work. Human beings work, they work in bursts, especially if they're creative human beings. They work quickly, and then they got to take a break, right? And the more creative the job role, the more that you have to allow people to just stop working for a second, go do something else, and come back, right? And I think we're moving into more and more creative work, and getting rid of the paper. I mean, the software is chewing up all the administrative paperwork stuff, particularly Workspace. So it's one of those things where, like, as we move people into creative work, which is probably the highest value add work, we're going to have to allow them to step away, even at random, to just ponder and mull. I mean, this shouldn't be new to anybody. You get stuck on a problem. What's the best thing to do? Stop working on it. Go do something else. Go play some ping pong, have the water cooler chat. Another element that's missing with people just kind of wandering around the office and talking to each other is that networking element. It feels much more transactional via chat, and the meetings are much more transactional. So, having something else to talk about besides work is a great thing that we've been trying to impress upon and get into the workspace experience. It's like, did you hear that playlist? It was terrible, right? Even if it was terrible, just give them something to talk about besides their job. Because as you've seen this, as people get more transactional, they tend to get more combative with each other because they're like, well, I'm just trying to do my job, right? Well, I'm trying to do my job, right? And now this isn't that. Instead, let's have a conversation about, man, they released another one of them stupid metal playlists, right? I hate that music, and just give them something to talk about, even if they like it or hate it or whatever. Just, they're human beings in the end. We haven't been turned into Elon's robots yet with the Neuralink. So we'll maybe soon, but right now, people have a life outside of work. And it's funny going back to what you're saying, that the lines blur. A lot of people need that separation, and then the distraction. Like, they need it. They really need it to do their best for you. Like, how does distraction do their best? It really does, because you got to allow people to kind of come off of a task, let that settle into their brain. That sleep, the old sleep on it mentality. Just let people do something else for a little while, and maybe that's more work, which we can present that in Workspace. Maybe they can move to another task, maybe go knock out some paperwork stuff while they get stuck on a creative task, or just have a plain conversation with another human being. I mean, a lot of people have more time with their people that they work with than sometimes with their children and spouses. So let's give these people something to talk about. They're stuck together either physically or virtually a lot of hours. And look, you can only talk to somebody for so long before you run out of topics, right? So we need to just pepper in what we call employer ordained distractions. So the employer still has control over what's going on with that. So that can be, obviously we don't want any people putting anything crazy or anything like that in there, but the employer can at least keep it focused. And what we're seeing, and Citrix is coming out with some of this stuff too, as a part of the packages, well-being. Hey, we can see you've been working for 6 hours straight. We're going to pause your feed, and you're going to go, maybe because we can tell if there's something urgent in there or not, but we're going to go make you take a break. You need to take a break, right? Like, let's be honest. You're a human being, not a robot. Go take a break. Here's a 15-minute yoga session video. You can click on it, do that, take a break, or hey, with pay periods coming up, here's some importance about investing in a retirement plan, or Spotify playlist.
Boy, you've taken the fucking fun out of this.
Well, that's kind of under the well-being.
I thought you were going to go with pay periods coming up. Here's a link to a really cool hoverboard you can buy.
Yeah, stuff. Well, hold on. So that's kind of under the well-being banner. We also have kind of under the distraction banner, which is news articles. So Spotify just published, we should be at the time of this recording, by the time that this recording drops, we should have New York Times, and we can edit, and we'll be able to edit into the future editions which type of articles come through. So when I was in the finance world, it was really good to be able to talk about, financial current events to clients and partners. And it's during the day, I was a sales guy. So, you're not really watching the news a whole bunch, trying to hustle the phone. So having some of those news articles just kind of come through so that you have something to talk about with people outside the organization. So it doesn't seem like you guys are like some kind of factory that's trying to get people's money. So just having some personality and something that's to talk about, and the employer being able to suggest and just allow for distraction and controlling that, right? So they're not just wandering all over the internet. They're actually being fed something that's relevant to the job, may not be direct, but it's relevant to, man, everybody I talk to at XYZ organization, they seem to know what they're talking about because all of them know the current events, right? Everybody's understanding what's going on out in the world. It seems like a pretty well put together organization. Now, it would be considered a distraction otherwise. But really, it's an improvement around the ability for those employees. Okay, so you have distractions. Last thing that we're going to be working on, I should say, we got two more, and I'll leave it at that. Another thing is also setting. So there's the set and then the setting that the person's in. So a lot of people work in buildings. They have coffee shops downstairs as people return to work. So what we're going to be bringing into Workspace is the ability to order the coffee and pay for it in Workspace for the employee, or the employer give credits to the employee. They can buy, and if it's kind of a WeWork co-working situation, that coffee can show up on the person's desk or sandwich or whatever they're buying, or they can go down there and it's set up. So some of the things that we're working on right now is Uber Eats, some of the other POS system apps, so that people can purchase these things directly through that Workspace experience. Now, Podio is not left out in all of this. A lot of this stuff, we're actually using Podio as the back end, at least for testing some of these integrations to show functionality. So keep that in mind. There's a kind of ready-made system as us Podio developers that if we don't want to have to deal with some large corporation or large piece of software, you can go do it yourself in Podio and get that same effect that a client would see over on the Workspace side. Okay, lastly, and I think this is the funnest part, because we can track everything that's going on in Workspace, we can actually gamify the feed. So, hey, you're way ahead, Jordan. Here's a $10 gift card. Thanks for being a great employee and knocking out your work for the day, right? Hey, you're super far ahead. There's really nothing left in your queue. We're going to go ahead and release you. Just keep an eye on your phone, right? We just put you on call. And then when the work starts to come in again, we can pull you back in during a work day. So being able to give people, like, take an hour break. You're way ahead for the day. And you can think about that, especially on frontline employees, how much they would appreciate that. And now you're adding value to their job without having to affect the bottom line with a bunch of raises and bonuses that are only, let's be honest, raises and bonuses only temporarily motivate employees. But how cool is it? If I work really hard right now, I might be able to skate an hour in the afternoon. Guess what? People do this anyway, right? Like, this happened before the pandemic. People would get stuff done and go, hey, Bob, can I jump out, an hour early? I got to go pick up my kid or whatever, right? So what do? They do their work really quickly and it's done. And as creative work and task-based work is much more project-oriented, so it's outcome-oriented, not, put your butt in a chair and hold the chair down for 8 hours, right? And just sit there. Even if you have no work, don't leave your chair. I've been at an employer that was like that. They literally was like, read the instruction manual. If you ran out of work, that's what they wanted you to do. And it's like, I can only read that so many times, right, before I go insane. So, my work is done, right? You paid me to do the job. I've done the job. Can I bounce like 15 minutes early because I got to go to college? This is when I was in college. And they're like, no, that chair might roll away. You have to sit in it.
You have to sit in it.
And that's
your ass. To be an effective employee, your ass has to be in that seat for this many hours. And that's simply not true.
And remote work has pierced that, right? It's just blown that whole equation. So anybody that's continuing to spout that stuff is lost and backwards. So how do we allow for that? And that extends, and I'll make the final point with this. That extends to what you're saying. So it really, the future of work is really about people accomplishing tasks efficiently in a manner that is to process, but not of process, right? Like I am a human being that's adding creative value as a part of the process, not a cog in the wheel, right? That's it's so cool to be able, especially as a Podio developer, to see the process, model it, and go, you know what? Let's take a pause. There's a human being involved. They have kids. They have other things that they do during the day, right? How can we design for a human being to actually work in the software? So a lot of times what we start with, and this is a huge advice that I know a lot of people do this, but to really, really buy into it, sell out and buy into this, go, what do you want your employees' day to look like? And I'm not talking about that they show up on time and they leave on time and they hold a chair down with their butt. We're talking about what what is it that's actually going on? How many parents do you have as employees? Oh, well, most of my employees are parents. Guess what? They're in remote work and there's going to be kids running around. I don't know how many Zoom meetings I've been on, the kids yabbering in the background. One parent is up in one room. This is how my wife is. She's got the nice office. I'm up in the storage room. You got to do that, fellas. So it's one of those things where like she's as part of the deal is the kids down there. Well, that's where all the toys are, right? So I got to take the kid upstairs, and sometimes parents have to just do what has to be necessary. I mean, you can't. But I don't want to be that parent that like locks the kid in the room, that latchkey kid thing, right? Where you lock him in the room and then it's problems later. I feel terrible, right? So you got to get it done somehow. So you're going to have kids running around in the background. Give them a mode of work that allows them to be creative, right? Which is really hard with a distraction, a kid. There could be many other distractions. And allow them to have the work come to them, because guess what you're not going to remember to do? That stupid stuff in Workday to make a PTO request, or, oh yeah, I have this one system that this client uses and they send messages there and I never check it. And then they get mad and they're literally the only client that uses they're trying to use Kik to get a hold of you. And you're like, you're the only person that does this. And then they get mad. You're not using my mode of communication. You're like, you're the only person that uses it. Right. Well, hey, you can be like, you know what? That's fine. And just put that integration in, pops up in the feed, could be popping as a Podio item, and just allow people to work as they are and allow the work to come to them, and I'll start eliminating all those crazy browser tabs that you have open.
Well, I think, bringing it back to the kind of Podio element here, just to close out, I think, I'm glad we're talking, I've wanted to talk about this for a bit, because it is a potentially exciting thing, because a lot of people are going to use other systems in their business other than Podio, QuickBooks
Correct.
Online, whatever else. Like Podio is brilliant at doing a ton of things, but it's not going to do everything in your life. Sadly, you're going to use Calendly or QuickBooks Online or anything else like that. And I think so that's one issue. And then the second issue is, you're going to, for any organization that has more than one or two people in it, chances are you're going to have some people whose role is defined in a way where they don't need to do a lot of things in Podio or in these other systems. They only need to do a few things. So the question then becomes, how do we make the most effective use of our Podio systems as well? And that is not necessarily bringing in these 4 people who only have to do one thing a month, because it is just not efficient or effective to them. And it's going to cause friction, and it's going to cause problems, and it's going to do all these sorts of things. And that's where I think setting aside developer notions and whatever it is you want as a developer to do, from a pure business owner point of view, what I like about this, and what I'm thinking is very interesting if you are someone who's using or building Podio in your organization, is identifying, do we have a lot of people? Do we have a bunch of people who don't really need to be in Podio, but I still want them to do the occasional thing. I need them to see a task given to them that tells them to do something, or I need them to do whatever it is. And you can look at it as Podio, and then you can look at the other systems you're using and look at it there. And the moment that the answer to that question becomes, yeah, geez, we got quite a few of these things, then I think Workspace becomes an interesting opportunity, because you can centralize and focus in a way that nothing else really can do. So
here is, and to extend that out further, and yes, I like to justify if they only do 4 things a year in a system, or something once a month, kind of like your QuickBooks experience and ADP experiences. It's like, here's a better question. Why should they even care? Right? I mean, what are you asking them to do? You're saying, I'm going to train you once, and then 2 years later, you need to do a whole bunch of stuff. Like, what kind of sick game is that? Right? Like, nobody's going to remember that. So, and it doesn't help, because guess what they're going to do? They're going to email other people in the organization. They're going to go bother people at their desk if it's virtual. They're going to try to set up a meeting. And then now you're spending, hundreds of dollars. And then, if it gets so bad, HR is gonna be like, well, we need to retrain, and then you're gonna, spend $10,000 or $15,000 gathering everybody in the room if it's any sizable organization. And then guess what? 2 weeks later, it's gone. It's gone, right? So stop it. Design it with a human being. There's a human being that's going to use this. So now I want to flip over on Podio, and there's Podio has a unique way to be able to also help address this. So because Podio developers know Podio, of course, there is an opportunity to use Podio as a way to bridge gaps inside of something like a Workspace or really even Sales or any of these other platforms people are using. Podio is there to be able to be a nice little gap filler. So sometimes that we do, we might have a system that has or a client that has a Workday system, and they didn't want to pay for some kind of module because it's $1 zillion over at Workday or whatever. Not to beat up Workday, there's plenty of other. Workday's a good system, but they may not want to pay for that module. You as the Podio developer can go make a little thing that bridges the gap. You don't want to pay $100,000 for a PTO system. You can pay a Podio developer a couple grand, and they're going to be more than happy to make you a quick PTO system, right? A few grand for something like that. One time where they want to license at these monoliths to open up all these sections. The old microtransaction model is starting to get into the business side of the software. Everything's subscription. Everything has to be unlocked with more pay, more payments and stuff like that. So Podio is uniquely positioned to build what we like to call store brand applications or generic applications that accomplish the same task. And this comes back to what you're saying. If it is in another platform that is more user-friendly, Workspace or otherwise, no one has to see Podio sitting in the back. You can have like a bot account that comes in and performs the work. So you have this beautiful system of record that is Podio that can fill in gaps very easily and with the workflow automations as well. So there's going to be a gigantic opportunity for Podio developers to build all either industry specific or universal store brand generic apps. You got the we have Kroger around here. We have the Kroger macaroni and cheese, and then you can pay an extra $2 for the Kraft, right? It's probably the same factory that makes both, just the boxes are different. So, it does the same outcome. You get the macaroni and cheese, right? Like you get the same outcome regardless of what you're using. But this, as the monoliths go towards more subscription, more pay for feature, we have this unique proposition. You go, oh no, it's super cheap. You want a PTO app, a couple grand one time, $5 a month, whatever, right? And that's going to be everywhere. Even if they've bought the monolith, they may still go with you, and then you just go talk to the monolith, right? So there's going to be a gigantic opportunity for Podio developers to become more creative when it comes to application building. And that's going to find its way into the Citrix Ready marketplace so that the Citrix sales team and other Citrix partners can sell those applications on the Podio developers' behalf to mix into solutions. So,
I think that's a whole other conversation that I think, yes. I think is worth maybe another time. But I think, we can close on just the concept here of, if there is the Citrix Workspace is a product that is fully kind of into the Citrix, ecosystem. It's a way, and it's got a potentially really interesting use case if your business is using Podio and or other systems, and you've got this need for potentially, to streamline the user experience so that, these 5 people don't have to be inside of these big systems because they only use them once in a while. And I think that's probably what I would recommend. Take a look at it, guys. People listening, we'll post the links under this blog. And obviously, if you've got any questions about Workspace and how that can integrate, then I do encourage everybody to reach out to Gil and his team at Brickbridge. We'll be posting posting the contact links on the podcast information. And I do absolutely encourage you to talk to them. There's nobody who's done as much in the the Podio ecosystem and Citrix, Podio Partner ecosystem with Workspace as Gil and the Brickbridge team. So please do check them out. Gil, we got a call to stop there. Thank you so much for being on this week.
All right. Thank you so much, Jordan.
You've been listening to Supercharged with Jordan Samuel Fleming. Subscribe today on iTunes, Google Play, or Spotify for your weekly dive into how you can supercharge your business by making it powered by Podio. Be sure to check out our website, wearegamechangers.com, where you can learn more and arrange a 30-minute call with Jordan to help you understand how Podio supercharges you.